Thank you, Mr. Acting President. Well, it's been a fascinating day, hasn't it? We've heard some extraordinary arguments today. We heard a debate this morning on the a motion by Mr. Limbrick to send our kids back to school. Ms. Terpstra got up and was talking about the school of the air, and I'm not exactly sure what the point was on that, but apparently it was some argument for keeping our kids home from school. But that was something that baffled me a little bit and still does. Then we had Mr. Mellom in this particular debate who tells me, or tells the House indeed, that the curfew is important because it keeps his kids at home. Now, that is hardly an argument to keep millions and millions and millions of people locked up at home because you don't know where your kids are otherwise. I mean, look, if Mr. Mellom has those problems, and I sympathise with him, and I understand that he would be frustrated by that, but you know, that is not an argument. That is not an argument to lock down the entire metropolitan area just because you know where your kids are. That is just quite a ludicrous position to take. Then we had Mr. Lean. Mr. Lean, as we know, is a very entertaining speaker at times, and he introduces aspects of debate that perhaps, well, let us say, might not otherwise be introduced. And he spoke about it not being about Mr. Andrews' leadership, about the Premier's leadership. But I remember about a week and a half ago, there was a rumour, was it last week? It might have been last week. There was a rumour that shot through Melbourne, shot through Victoria, then it shot through Australia, that Tim Pallas was about to challenge, Uncle Fester was about to challenge Uncle Fester and Lurcher at it, and Uncle Fester was going to challenge Daniel Andrews. Now, this rumour was jumped upon by millions of people around Victoria who were so excited at the prospect. They obviously don't know who Uncle Fester is, or they wouldn't have been so excited.
Point of order, Ms. Stitt.
Thank you, Acting President. I believe that, consistent with your previous ruling, I think Mr. Finn is straying off the very narrow nature of this motion, and I would ask you to bring him back to the substance. Thank you.
Yeah, I will actually uphold the point of order. Mr. Finn, if you could at least, as I said to Mr. Lean, keep it where we can all see it.
Yeah, no, I was just very briefly making reference to arguments that Mr. Lean had made. But I just make the observation in passing that anybody who was excited at the prospect that Tim Pallas was about to be Premier obviously doesn't know Tim Pallas. But anyway, I move on. Now, the situation with this curfew is one that I have said in this House before confuses me quite considerably. Now, despite what Mr. Lean has told us today, I have not heard the Premier of this state satisfactorily explain why we have to be at home between 8 as it was, now 9, and 5 in the morning. He's not explained that at all, and now we can understand why. We can understand why he's not fully explained it, because he can't. He can't. That's the bottom line. We've now discovered that this was not at the request or at the suggestion of the Chief Health Officer. It was not at the suggestion or the request of the Chief Commissioner of Police. And you've got to ask the question, whose idea was this? Whose idea was this? Now, the Premier says, I don't know. That's his basic response to everything these days. I don't know. Do any of these meetings that the government has, do they have minutes? Do they actually have minutes that records what people say and what they do? Do they actually have minutes that record who voted for what and what decisions were made and who made them? Because it seems to me that a government that hides behind "I don't know" is either entirely incompetent or entirely dishonest. Now, I think this government's probably got a fair bit of both. But we, as Victorians, deserve a hell of a lot better. A hell of a lot better than that. Now, I am very, very concerned about the public reaction, particularly to the police. Now, as members of this House would be aware, I have been a very strong supporter of the Victoria Police Force for a very, very long time. Going back 20 years ago, I was first expressed my very deep concern about the actions of the then Chief Commissioner, Christine Nixon, who began the politicisation of Victoria Police. And since then, we've had Simon Overland, we've had Graham Ashton, and they have continued that process. And I'm hoping that Chief Commissioner Patton will reverse that, but I'm not holding my breath. It has to be said. But the attitude, the attitude of so many Victorians now. As I've detected, as I've gone around my electorate and spoken to people, I have detected a change in attitude of the general public toward the police. They now see the police, a lot of people now see the police as the enemy. They now see the police as being the enforcers for Daniel Andrews. That, to my way of thinking, is a tragedy. It's a tragedy. People out at night, you know, they're racing home, possibly breaking the speed limit in order to get home before 8 o'clock as it was, or 9 o'clock now. You see a police car, and normally, you know, you'd say, oh, it's a police car, good on you. Now, fear grips the heart. You know, the heart is in the throat. Are they going to pull me over? Are they going to pull me over? And if they do pull me over, what are they going to do to me? I mean, we've seen a number of incidents over the last couple of weeks where police have apparently they've overstepped the mark. Now, we all know that in every barrel there's the odd bad apple, but it seems to me, particularly after the comments by Assistant Commissioner Luke Cornelius, there is a general attitude now in certain sections of the police force that they can get away with anything. And it concerns me enormously that this curfew gives that attitude even stronger grounds for to grow in the community. That concerns me enormously. Anything which undermines the confidence, undermines public confidence in Victoria Police, as far as I'm concerned, is a bad thing, and it should go. This curfew is one such thing. This curfew is actually undermining public confidence in Victoria Police, and I think that is a particular tragedy. This Premier, as we know, Premier Andrews, has he's on a power kick of some significance. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I don't think there's anybody who would argue against that. He's on a major power kick, and he has adopted the attitude. And I'm not sure who it was said it years ago. Never let a crisis go to waste. And he is certainly not allowing that to happen. He is jumping in, and he is. Well, he's perhaps, I don't know whether he's fulfilling his childhood dreams or what it is, but he is cracking down on human rights. And now, I never thought I'd be talking about this in the Victorian Parliament about my fellow Victorians, but we are having our human rights trod upon by a Premier who clearly does not care about the impacts of his actions. As long as he gets his way, as long as we do as we are told, like good little boys and girls, then he's happy. Now, this is a classic example. This curfew thing is a classic example because, as I said before, this was not at the request of the Chief Health Officer or a suggestion of the Chief Health Officer. This was not a request or a suggestion by the Chief Commissioner of Police. This clearly came from the Premier himself or those close to him. Where are the grounds for this curfew to continue? I don't see them. I didn't see them when it was first implemented. I don't see it now. Now, the Premier, as I said earlier, the Premier has from time to time made some vague passing reference to the need for this curfew. But the fact of the matter is There is no need for the curfew. This curfew will not and does not do anything to fight the Wuhan virus. It does nothing. So why is it there? Why is it there? I mean, if the Premier wants to overstep the mark in terms of treading on our rights, well, he's certainly doing it the right way. He's certainly doing it the right way. But I cannot, for the life of me, see how anybody can possibly argue that this curfew is about fighting a virus, because it's not. It's not. I mean, the fact that I can go shopping at 9:15, but I can't go shopping at 9:15. What impact does that have on who gets a virus? What impact does that have? I can go for a drive at 9:15, but I can't go for a drive at 9:15. What impact does that have on this virus? The fact of the matter is this curfew has no impact on the virus at all. This is about something altogether different, something that is clearly in the Premier's mind, but something that he is yet to fully explain to the people of Victoria. And my suggestion very, very strongly is that if you are going to lock people up in their homes for 8 hours a day, you better explain why. You must, Premier, explain why you are doing it. You can't lock people up and just leave them hanging. Say, you think about it, work it out yourself. No, if you're going to do something like that, and let's face it, this is the first curfew in Australian history. We didn't even have a curfew during the war. This is the first curfew in Australian history. And if you're going to implement this, if you're going to lock people up, you've got to tell them why. You've got to tell them why. And he hasn't done that. And the reason, as I said before, that he hasn't done that is because, well, there is no reason. There is no reason. It's quite extraordinary that we would be debating this motion here today. I certainly commend Mr Davis very strongly for bringing this motion before the House. I was walking through the city last night. I was actually out looking for something to eat. In Melbourne, can you believe it? I was looking for something to eat. And there wasn't much around because, the shops were closed, the restaurants were closed. So many shops had for lease signs in the windows. And I had my eye on the watch because I knew come 9 o'clock, the boys in black might be out to escort me to the back of the paddy wagon if I didn't do the right thing. So here I was in a hurry looking for food in the centre of Melbourne, the culinary capital of Australia up until recent times, and I couldn't find it. I ended up going to KFC. Can you believe it? Which is pretty sad state of affairs. We have a very, very strange government is doing some very, very strange things to the people of this state, particularly at the moment to the people of Melbourne. It seems to have some sort of bent toward the people of Melbourne who are suffering under the jackboots. Mr. Lean talked about boots before. Well, we're talking about the jackboots of this government. There is no respect. There is no respect for the people of this state, and particularly there is no respect for the people of Melbourne from this government. It is not good enough. We should not have to tolerate that. We should not have to tolerate that. We deserve better. Victorians deserve better. And I hope to God the government will snap out of this mindset that they have. One would hope that there would be somebody over on the other side of the House, somebody in the other chamber, the other place, who would have the common sense, the cool logic to say to the Premier, you're taking this in the wrong direction. For God's sake, will you calm down? You would hope that common sense would prevail. Now, as members know, and I've said this quite openly, I am an optimist. A Liberal in the western suburbs learns to be an optimist. But the fact of the matter is, I am not optimistic that this government has the first idea what it is doing. It is appalling what it has done to Victoria, to Melbourne. I hope it changes very, very quickly.